Hello guys, welcome to my SQL series on LearnIn. My name is Nse. In this video, we are going to talk about aggregate functions. Aggregate functions in MySQL are special functions that allow you to perform calculations on a set of values and return a single result. These functions are powerful tools for summarizing and analyzing data in MySQL. Some of the aggregate functions are the count function, which counts rows in a table. Sum function, which calculates the sum of the values in a specified column. The average function, denoted by AVG, it calculates the average of the values in a specified column. Now let's head over to my command line client and see how these functions work. Feel free to use my SQL workbench if you so prefer. Remember, the queries are exactly the same. So if you would be comfortable following along, working with my SQL workbench, that's totally fine. So here in the command line client, I'll enter my password as always, and I'll hit the enter key of my keyboard. Now I'm going to select the database to use. So for this, I'll show databases, end with a semicolon, hit enter. I'm going to use the bookstore database, so I'd say use book underscore store, semicolon, I'll hit enter, then I'd make sure it's the bookstore database in use by typing select database with the parenthesis semicolon. I'll hit enter, and here I have my confirmation. Now let's decide on the table to use. For this, I'll show tables because I want to see the tables that are currently available in the bookstore database. Semicolon, I'll hit enter, and we have all these tables. I'm going to work with employees table. So I would want us to see the data in the employees table. I'd say select star from employees. Remember that this is going to show all the data that we currently have in the employees table, and this here is the employees table. Now if you have been following this series, you will notice that this employees table is different from the employees table that we were using in the earlier episodes of this series. I made some changes behind the scenes because we have not yet gotten to how to alter tables. So in order not to confuse us, I made these changes behind the scene. Just don't worry, as we progress, we will get to how to alter tables, and we would be able to create tables and then add columns to it after it has been created and all that. So that being said, let's go ahead to seeing how some of these aggregate functions work. Let's start with the count function. Count function counts the rows in a table. The syntax is like so. You'd have the select keyword, and then you have count, you have parentheses, and within this parenthesis, you'd type the column that is up for consideration, and then you have from, then you provide the table name. Let's head back to command line client and see how this plays out. Let's have select count Let's have the opening parenthesis. I want to count everything, so I have star there. And then from the table we are working with is the employees table. I'll end with a semicolon, hit enter, and notice that we have 20 returned to us. Remember that the count function counts the rows in a table, and currently we have 20 rows in the employees table, so that's why count star returns 20. Let's insert into employees in the first name column, and let's explicitly set it to null. Let's select star from employees. So we have some null values added. So we can try using the distinct clause. We can have select count, and then would have distinct, all within the parentheses, and we're still using the first name column from employees. And this time we have 15 rows returned. That's because in this employees table we only have 15 distinct first names. Some of the first names are repeated. You have say more than once, really. We have Maria more than once. We have Denise more than once, and some other names like that. So remember that the distinct clause would only collect unique values. So every duplicate is going to be left out. That's why we have 15 here, even though we currently have 22 rows in our employees table. Remember that we now have 22 columns because of this last two rows that we inserted a minute ago. Now let's take a look at the sum function. Sum function calculates the sum of the values in a specified column. The syntax is like so. You have select, you have sum, and then parentheses, and within the parentheses you provide the column name, and then from, then table name. Let's head back to the command line client and write this down. So while using sum, we should be working with numeric columns. So we have age containing numbers, and we have the salary column containing numbers as well. It would make more sense to sum the salary column, so I'm going to use the salary column. So I'd have select sum and parentheses. Within this parenthesis I want to provide salary, and I'd say from employees. Maybe we want to find out how much money from the company goes to salaries. So when we hit enter, you'd notice that we have the salary sum shown like this, with this many decimal places, which can be formatted, and we can format the salary using the format function, in which case we would have the format function wrapping the sum of the salary. I see how this looks confusing, but just take it one bit at a time. We have select, and then we have the format function. Format function has the parentheses, and then within the parentheses we have sum of the salary column, and we want 2 places of decimal, so that's why we have these 2 here. Now let's hit enter, and now notice that we have a sum in 2 places of decimal. We can decide to use an alias so that the heading does not look this confusing. So in that case, we would have select format, then what we want to format, which is the value that we get from the sum of the salary column data, and we want it to be in two places of decimal, and then would have the alias. So would say as, I want to use two words, so I need to use those quotes, total salary, just like that, then hit enter. So now notice that we have the heading as total salary, and then we have the total salary given to us. It's a float with two places of decimal. I hope that that's clear. Now let's take a look at the average function written as AVG. This function calculates the average of the values in a specified column. The syntax is like so: you have select, you have AVG, then parenthesis, and within this parenthesis we provide the column that is up for consideration, like the column which average you want to find, and then we have from, and then the table name. Let's head back to command line client and put this to use. So here in the command line client, we're going to have select AVG, and let's find the average salary. So would have the salary column, close the parentheses, and then would have from, and then the table name employees, hit enter, and this is the average salary with this many places of decimal. So let's use the format function again. So we are going to have select format, and within the format parenthesis we would have the average, because we are working with the average value that we would get, and we want two places of decimal. So I'd have comma 2 there, and let's have an alias, let's say as average salary, like that, from employees, semicolon, and then I'll hit enter, and the average salary is clearer and more readable because we have been able to reduce it to two places of decimal. So we now have this value as the average salary. Now let's take a look at the mean function. The mean function retrieves the minimum value from a specified column. The syntax is like so: you have select mean parenthesis. Notice that all these functions come with parentheses, and it's within this parenthesis that you provide the specific column name that you want to consider in your query. Then you have from, and then the table name. Let's head back to the command line client. So here we are going to have select, we want the minimum age, so within the parentheses would have age, and our table is the employees table, so we have select mean age from employees, would hit enter. So the minimum age of our employee is 28. That's just how the mean function works. If we wanted the minimum salary, we would have select mean, and then within the parentheses would have salary, and it would be from the employees table, of course. Then we hit enter, and the minimum salary is 1,000. I hope that you get the point. Now let's talk about the max function. Max function retrieves the maximum value from a specified column. The syntax is like so: select max, you provide the column name within the parentheses, from, and then the table name. Let's go see how this works in the command line client. So here I'm going to say select max. I want to see the oldest age that we have, and then I'd say from employees. So we end up having select max parenthesis, and within the parenthesis the column that is up for consideration. Currently it's the age column because we want to see the oldest age that we have amongst our employees. So I'd hit enter, and the oldest is 50. The youngest is 28, as we saw with the mean function, whereas the oldest is 50, as is shown using this max function. Now, in talking about aggregate functions, group by comes up. Let's take a look at group by. Group by is a clause used with aggregate functions to group the result set by one or more columns into distinct groups. Each group ends up being represented by a single row in the result set. I see how this can be confusing. It's a lot of words in one place. We're going to see actual examples that would help us to understand what this definition is saying better. Meanwhile, let's look at the syntax. The syntax is as so: you would have select, and then you specify the columns and write the aggregate function. Aggregate function in this case could be count, mean, max, just any aggregate function that would suit your needs. And then you provide the column name. Remember, aggregate functions come with this parenthesis, so within the parentheses you provide the column name, and then from table name then you have the group by clause, and then you provide the column or columns that you would want to group by. We are going to see examples. And if you're wondering where to see the aggregate functions, this is MySQL docs on aggregate function. I have provided this link in the description. So below here we have the aggregate functions in MySQL. Here in table 12.29, we have all these functions from AVG down to variants. Clicking on any of them is going to open the description. So we have clicked on AVG and it has brought us to where we have the description, and then we can see here that AVG returns the average value of an expression, and that's basically it. When you come here on this page, click on any of these functions that you're interested in working with, and then it's going to open to where you have the syntax, and then you have the description, and then you have examples. If you have any questions or comments, you can say them in the comment section. I just wanted to say this to further guide us. All right, so that being said, let's head back to command line client and see how group by works. So to further explain, when you use group by, it's going to be like putting similar items together. Imagine that you have a bunch of objects and you want to group them based on their colors, so that all the red ones go together, all the blue ones go together, and so on. Doing it like this is going to help you to do things like count, add, or even find the average of each group separately. So let's use this employees table in explaining. Using group by, if I have a query that wants to select whatever it's selecting, let's say that it is selecting the first name and it is grouping by the first name, what this is going to return to us would be distinct values of the names that we have in the first name column. That's because behind the scenes, all the repeated names would be in one group. Considering Nse appears two times, two times. So we are going to have a group of first names that are Nse. That would be one group. and Hans appears 2 times. So we are going to have a separate group containing first names of Hans, and Denise appears, I think, twice, because this other Denise has this question mark and that makes all the difference. So Denise appears twice, and so we are going to have another group for Denise. That's basically how it works. I really hope that you get the point. All these are behind the scenes. You would not see the separate groups spelled out as I have described. Now let's see some examples that would make us understand it better. So let's first of all have select. We have the first name column. We are not using any aggregate functions yet. We're just using group by to see how it works. So we want to group by first name semicolon. Notice how group by is written. You have group and then you have space before you have by. So this query comes to select first name from first name, because that's the column that we are considering, the first name column, from employees. And then we have group by. We want to group by first name. Now let's hit enter to execute. Now notice that we have 16 rows. So 16 rows because we have 16 distinct values. Like I explained, all the repeated values would belong in one group. Nse and Nse would be in one group. All the values for Maria would be in the group that's assigned to Maria. All the values for Denise would be in the group that's assigned to Denise. And at the end, we just have the distinct values returned to us. Let's use group by with an aggregate function, say count. So I would hit the up arrow key of my keyboard to bring back this query, the last query that I wrote, and I'm going to edit it. I'll use the left arrow to go back to where I want to include the count. Now, if this is confusing, you can write it from scratch. So where we are going to include the aggregate function is after the column. The column here is first name, so would have comma, and then I'm going to have count, and I want to count everything. So I have star within the parentheses. So we end up having select first name, and then we are counting everything from employees, and we are grouping by first name. So let's hit enter to execute. Now notice that we have our first name groups, and we have the number of values in each of the groups. So under Nse, we have 2 values, and if we look within the employees table, you're going to see that Nse appears 2 times. Let's look at Maria. Maria appears 3 times, and on this table that shows the first name groups and the counts, we have Maria appearing 3 times. Hans appears 2 times on the table. Denise appears 2 times. We have Null 2 times. So that's basically how group by would work using count. So remember that we found the mean age by simply having select mean age from employees, and the mean age is 28. We also found the max age by simply selecting max age from employees, written like this, and we have 50. We have been able to find the maximum age of our employees, and we have also been able to find the minimum age. Now let's see how to show the employee who has this maximum age. To do this, considering all that we have seen so far, we can use order by. Remember that we talked about order by in one of our videos. If you find order by strange, you may want to refer to that video. I have the link provided in the description. So we could have something like select star from employees, and then would have order by age, and we want it to be in descending order, so we have DESC. And if we execute this query, we will have our employees arranged in order of their ages from the highest to the least. That's because we are using the descending order here. So we would have from the highest value of age, which is 50, down to null. Null is, empty or something. Yeah, null is empty. So that would definitely show as the least age value. Now let's say that we want to see the employees with the highest age, like we want to see the oldest employee in our company. We could decide to run this query, but let's limit it. Would use limit clause, and we set it to 1. Remember what limit clause does? It's just going to specify the number of rows to return, and if we have it at 1, it means just 1 row is returned to us, and that's the first row that we have here showing the value of 50. But now I want us to notice that we have more than one employee with the age of 50. So if we would want to show all the employees with the maximum age, we would maybe have something like limit of 3, and we would now have the 3 employees with the age of 50 shown. The concern with this, however, is that you may not know how many employees are associated with the value that you are considering. In this example, you may not know how many employees are of the age 50. So in the case where we cannot determine the number of rows that we are considering, then we will not be able to use limit. So that brings us to talking about subquery. A subquery is basically a select statement within another select statement. So in a query, when you have one select statement inside another select statement, the inner one is called a subquery. Let's head back to command line client and see how it works. So here in command line client, we are going to have select star from employees, and we would have where. Remember the where clause. We're trying to find all the employees that have the maximum age. So we would say where age equals to, and then we would have parentheses. Within the parentheses, we would have select max, because we are trying to find the maximum age from employees. Then we'd close the brackets and would end with a semicolon. Now notice that we have 2 select statements, the one that starts the query and then the one within this parenthesis. This query within the parenthesis is a subquery. The output of the second select statement, which is the inner query, is the value that will first be evaluated. And then this first select statement, which is the outer query, is now going to work with that value. This therefore means that the maximum age is first evaluated, and then all the data containing the maximum age is displayed as the output. That's because we are selecting star from here. So this star will now be considering all the values that will be contained in all the rows that have the maximum age in the employees table. In this case, maximum age is 50. So we will only have employees who are 50 years old displayed to us. Now let's execute this query and see what it comes to. Notice that we have all the employees with the age of 50 displayed to us. So this way we can easily determine the maximum age alongside all the employees who have this maximum age. So you can see that using a subquery has enabled us to find the maximum age value without needing to use the limit clause. Using the subquery is very helpful when you are unsure about the number of times that a particular value occurs in a table. So that's basically how to use a subquery. I hope that is clear. Lastly, today I want to say that it is possible to group by multiple columns. For example, we have the first name, as we earlier saw, selecting name, count, star from employees, group by first name, semicolon, hit enter. Remember, we did this before. Having this way makes it kind of difficult to tell which employee is which, really, because you just have, for instance, the two occurrences of Unse in one place, the three occurrences of Maria in one place. Let's say that we wanted to further distinct them, in which case we would want to consider something like the last name. It's possible for us to use the group by clause working with the first name and the last name columns. So we could have select first name, count, star. Then we want to group by both first name and last name. Notice that I am separating these two columns with a comma. I have first name, comma, last name. Let's hit enter. So notice that now here we have 18 rows returned to us compared to here when we had 16. So you can see that Unse is now broken in two places. We have Unse here and we have Unse here again. That's because the last names are different. If we check this employees table, you'd see that the first occurrence of Unse is Unse Sam, and the next occurrence of Unse is Unse Joe. So this combination with the last name has further ungrouped Unse, because now this query is considering both the first name and the last name. So the groups would be formed based on first name and last name put together. That makes Unse Sam different from Unse Joe. Let's go back to the table. The consideration now would be Lola Nathan, Mary Jane Nathan, Nelson Jude. So the groups would now be where there are repetitions of the first name and the last name combined. We can show that clearly by concatenating. Let's have select concat. We are concatenating the first name, comma, space, comma, and then last name, and then we would count star from employees, group by first name and last name. We need an alias, so I'd say as full name. Let's hit enter. No semicolon. I'll introduce a semicolon and hit enter. So now notice that we have a clearer picture of what I was trying to explain earlier. We have all the groups shown, and then notice that Maria Jeff has 2 values in one group, Dennis Fuji 2, and null is 2. Let's just select star from employees. Have an error because I have this pound sign in place of star. I apologize. Select star from employees, semicolon, hit enter. So let's take a look at the employees table. Here we have a group for Maria Jeff and it has count of 2. So if we check through this table, we would see that we have Maria Jeff here, and then we have another Maria Jeff. We also have that Denise Fuji appears twice. So we would have Denise Fuji here and Dennis Fuji here. Actually, the whole point of this is to further distinguish the values that are being considered. I do hope that you get the point. This is all that we are going to take today. If you have any questions or comments, please say them in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Learn In. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.